We are more than a month in a shutdown. People are not getting paid. Families are going hungry. People are expected to show up to work and not being paid a dime. And you think Donald Trump gives a fuck about black people in Nigeria? American kids are being gunned down on a daily. There is a genocide happening here in America against children in schools. And you think that white man gives a flying fuck about Nigerians? Christians are being prosecuted. Wasn't it a Christian school that got shot up a couple months ago? With Christian kids attending, praying to God? Yeah, okay.
Hi lovelies and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, you're welcome to Building the Verse. Don't forget to please subscribe to this channel, turn on notifications so that anytime I upload a video, you will be the first person to be notified. To my returning subscribers, to those people that share my videos, leave commentaries, and also educate each and every one of us, you guys are the real MVP. Alright lovelies, let's dive into today's video.
So let me get this straight. Donald Trump makes a tweet publicly condemning the mass genocide of Christians in Nigeria and says that he's going to do something about it. Actual Nigerians have come online to say, hey, there is no mass genocide of Christians in Nigeria. Sure, we do have religious killings and Boko Haram is still terrorizing people, but there's more Muslims being killed than actual Christians in Nigeria, and the United States is using this as an excuse to intervene militarily so that they can siphon our resources. And then Nicki Minaj goes online to basically publicly endorse Donald Trump in his decision to intervene in Nigeria's political instability and their national security threats. And the Barbs are online talking about chestnut checkers. Gotta love it. Let me tell you something. Whenever the US government publicly declares that they are going to enact foreign policy in a foreign country so that they can save innocent lives, please understand that it has absolutely nothing to do with saving lives, and it has everything to do with exploiting the political instability of that country so that they can keep that country under their thumb while exploiting their resources and strengthening the US imperialist machine. They never do these things out of goodwill. It is always out of greed. Do not let them lie to you, and do not be fooled.
Nicki Minaj supports Trump. For context, she's responding to how Trump is going to do something about the Nigerian Christians being persecuted in Nigeria. Reading this made me feel a deep sense of gratitude. We live in a country where we can freely worship God. No group should ever be persecuted for practicing their religion. We don't have to share the same beliefs in order for us to respect each other. Numerous countries all around the world are being affected by this horror, and it's dangerous to pretend we don't notice. Thank you to the president and his team for taking this seriously. God bless every persecuted Christian. Let's remember to lift them up in prayer. First of all, I never thought I'd see Nicki Minaj, trap rapper, speak on serious issues. Maybe she's trying to change her image. Either way, I'm glad she did. This shows the power of the internet. A lot of people have been speaking out about this. It really started with this meme where people completely ignore Christians when they're being persecuted, but for some reason they stand in line to support Palestine. By the way, don't forget what Al Jazeera posted about a month ago, completely denying what's happening in Nigeria.
Not on my 2025 bingo card is agreeing with Nicki Minaj. So apparently Nicki Minaj came out and officially endorses President Trump. On her X post, she says, quote, "I feel a deep sense of gratitude," unquote. And then she shocks the entire internet by saying, "We live in a country where we can freely worship God. No group should be persecuted for practicing their religion." What, Nicki Minaj? She continues by saying, "We don't have to share the same beliefs in order for us to respect each other. Thank you to the president and his team for taking this seriously. God bless every persecuted Christian. Let's remember to lift them up in prayer." And if you didn't know, she's talking about what Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social account, talking about all the Christian persecution in Nigeria and how if they don't stop it themselves, we are going to come in there, guns a-blazing, and wipe it out. So yeah, Nicki Minaj endorsing Trump and praying for Christians was definitely not on 2025 bingo card. But go Nicki Minaj.
Is Nicki Minaj glazing for Trump to lobby for a part of her sex offender husband? At first glance, it seemed that way until you realize that she's just doing it for the love of the game. Most of these black celebrities follow a very weird pattern, though. Glaze for Trump and a pardon will come later. Kodak Black, Lil Wayne, NBA Youngboy are all rappers who have received pardons from the guy in the White House and have in return posted statements of support to their fans. But upon closer look, there are no federal cases currently pending for Nicki. So I started thinking to myself, is she doing it to lobby for a part of her husband? Unlikely. His only federal charge was for failing to register as a sex offender. His probation terms are almost over. The other charges are state charges, and presidents can't pardon state offenses. So is she lobbying for citizenship? In 2024, she stated that she's not a citizen yet and expressed surprise that she hasn't been granted honorary citizenship yet. So maybe that's her angle. Is she planning to sue Jay-Z for hundreds of millions of dollars in federal court and is looking for a Trumpy-friendly judge? Probably not. And then there's rumors about $100 million tax debt, but those are exactly that. Rumors. So if 1 + 1 = 2 and 2 + 1 = 3, it's obvious to me that she's just doing it for the love of the game. Her beef with Democrats is long-standing and well-documented. She spread COVID-19 vaccine misinformation, mocked Kamala Harris for losing the 2024 presidential election in a recent post, and has been feuding with the party ever since the My Cousin's Friend's swollen balls got swollen from the vaccine incident. This is not to say that she doesn't have federal charges looming, because with her erratic behavior, who knows what could be on the horizon. But also, this shouldn't be a surprise. She has a song that literally says, "I'm a Republican voting for Mitt Romney," so maybe the signs were always there.
And if you're a Barb or Nicki Minaj stan, how does the embarrassment of this week feel, as Nicki Minaj has lost a record number of support due to her association with, you guessed it, Donald J. Trump? You see, Trump posted recently that Nigeria would be designated a particular country of concern for religious persecution of Christians. But as we discussed in my previous video, it's not only Christians that are being persecuted in Nigeria right now, and so it's incredibly inaccurate to imply so. However, Nicki Minaj shared Donald Trump's Truth Social post on Nigeria and actually showered him with praise. And as a result of this, her support has been lauded loudly by the entirety of the MAGA world and other MAGA supporters, to the very extent to where her very own fans are wondering, is Miss Girl a secret Republican herself? I personally wish that people with as much reach as Nicki were more accurate on what's actually happening around the world, or in this case, what's happening in Nigeria, as it's leaving people with a very incomplete picture of what's truly happening over there. And coming from a Nigerian myself, let's just call a spade a spade. Who is actually surprised that Miss Girl is a Republican or a Trump supporter? Even as a Nicki Minaj stan, who is really surprised at that?
I just saw Nicki Minaj thanking President Trump for standing up to the Islamic extremists in Nigeria and protecting Christians, because Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria. I am sorry to have to be the one to tell you, but he does not give two squats about Christians in Nigeria. That is geopolitical positioning. That is just a pretext to go in, because Nigeria has literally all the things that we need for our technology. For example, large deposits of lithium, natural gas, iron ore, lead, columbite. They have gemstones like amethyst and rubies and gold. So no, he couldn't care less about Christians. But what he does care about is the fact that we used to get rare earth minerals like graphite and tungsten from China. But now we're not as friendly with China. We've been hitting them with tariffs. We've been playing games with them. So now the supply chain has become more complex. It's become more contentious. And so we need to find another source for those minerals. Those are rare earth minerals. We need them for global energy transitions. And Nigeria has them. So yes, Christians be damned. Unfortunately, that is not his goal. Sorry, Nikki.
Listen to me, man. Nigeria is not a state systematically eliminating Christians. Repeat after me. Nigeria is not a state systematically eliminating Christians. If you get nothing else out of this video, understand that Nigeria is not a state systematically eliminating Christians. Nigeria is a very populous country. Nigeria has its blessings, it has its troubles. Nigeria is a country in which we have almost the same amount of Christians as the same amount of Muslims. Nigeria is a country where there are Christian politicians and Muslim politicians. Along with those blessings, Nigeria does have its issues. Nigeria does have security issues. Nigeria does have corrupt leaders. Nigeria can and will do better because it has one of the most resilient people in the world. But however, what Nigeria does not deserve and what Nigeria should not be characterized as, right, is a tool by people who like to weaponize Christianity, okay, in order to get their agenda off. It should not be characterized as a nation that is going around persecuting Christians by people who like to get their agenda off, okay? As someone that is Nigerian American, I talk about politics and rap, and I hope you guys have been trusting me for the last few months, deep diving on these two topics. I feel very qualified to touch on this weird collision of worlds in which I never thought I would be talking about Nigeria, Donald Trump, Nicki Minaj, all in one. But let's get into it. First and foremost, this is what started it off. Let's go with that. It's Donald Trump saying Christianity is facing a threat in Nigeria. Thousands of Christians are being unalive. Radical Islamists are responsible. I'm thereby making the Nigeria country a particular concern. And you can see the rest. There's more from Donald Trump, but I want to go with Nicki Minaj, and then I'll go back to Donald Trump, and then I'll go back to Nigeria. Okay? Nicki Minaj adds on to Donald Trump's message and says, reading this made me feel a deep sense of gratitude. We live in a country where we can freely worship God, etc. Now, on surface level, when you're reading this and you read everything here and somewhat of a signaling, you're thinking, oh, okay, if, this, we accept Donald Trump's, statement that, Christians are being persecuted in Nigeria and Christians are being persecuted worldwide, then we have to accept Nicki Minaj's statement and go, yeah, all is well, just two Christians trying to do well for other Christians. Well, hold on. Now, me personally, I understand when someone is the president of the United States, a lot of people are going to work with him, a lot of people are going to be next to him. But let's make no mistake, especially the way they operate online, Nicki Minaj and Donald Trump share similar traits, okay? And before I walk you into understanding what they're both doing here, I want to ask you a question. Remember the genocide of white South African farmers? Can someone give me an update on that? For something so serious in which you had to bring white South African farmers to the United States, I would think we would be getting day-to-day updates. I would think people would be talking about the white South African farmers that couldn't escape. What happened to them now? etc. Right? Okay, almost like an agenda was in place there. Right. And if you look at, for example, immigration numbers lately and people getting certain statuses, it's an agenda to get more white, European looking folks, let's call it that, into this country. But I say that to say that Donald Trump is one that when he speaks, you have to wonder what the agenda is or what the agenda of the state is. Sometimes both of them. Right. And we see the rise in Islamophobia. We see people like I remember I made a video about, and I'll tag that at the bottom, Bill Maher, trying to use a country like Nigeria when there are attacks and there's violence as a shield to say, hey, why doesn't people care about this but want to talk about what's going on in the Middle East? So you see things like that. And also Nigeria, along with being a populous country, has a lot of oil. OK, so and as you know, with many African countries, we've got to be mindful of when foreign intervention comes in. But so let's just layer that out. Donald Trump has his own agendas. Donald Trump moves like a cult leader. Donald Trump plays victim a lot. Donald Trump does not practice, Christian ways, but is willing to hide behind Christianity and weaponize it. Well, it sounds like somebody else to me who is now going on echoing the statements of Donald Trump. Another person that's willing to go on rants. Yes, that is Nicki Minaj. I can't mince my words here. I have to be very direct because this is a serious issue. OK, and when she amplifies the president's message, she has the same thing that the president has, which is a bunch of lapdogs and a bunch of cult members who are now going to buy into the idea that Nigeria is this country persecuting Christians. OK, and just like Donald Trump. OK, if you can show the world or, try to prove to the world that Christians are under attack and you hide behind Christianity when you attack people online and use Bible verses, you can then project that you yourself as a Christian is under attack. Do we understand that? Okay, I've said enough about Nicki Minaj. Now let's move on to Donald Trump and Nigeria. But I hope you understand why I just said what I said. If you don't, any questions, leave them below. This is nothing but victim, playing victim. This is nothing but attaching yourself to an issue that you are not educated on. And this is nothing but us, making life, honestly, ruining the PR of fans in a country that roots for you.
Did you see that Nicki Minaj tweeted in support of Trump's lie that Nigeria needs to be invaded because it is allowing Christians to be unalived by terrorist groups? If you didn't know, Donald Trump has been spreading the false claim that the Nigerian government is allowing Christians to die and saying that in the face of this lie that he invented, the United States cannot stand by while such atrocities are happening in Nigeria and numerous other countries. We stand ready, willing, and able to save our great Christian population around the world. Now, the situation in Nigeria is way more complicated than Trump is making it seem. Surprise, surprise. Nigeria has been dealing with terrorist groups like Boko Haram, but most of the people they unalive have been Muslims. Groups monitoring the violence in the country say that Christians are not being killed more than Muslims. And advisors to the president of Nigeria have said that if the U.S. is concerned about these groups, that they should work together. That Nigeria will welcome the U.S. help in tackling the groups, but noted that it was a sovereign country. But the U.S. government, especially under the Trump administration, does not care about cooperation or truth. It only cares about using selective outrage or lies to justify an invasion. Which is why it's concerning that someone with such a massive following like Nicki Minaj would repeat these lies, especially someone who's a black immigrant from a country that has its own history of colonization under the guise of religion. Trump seems to be trying to start up a new wave of colonization by spreading lies about Nigeria, Venezuela, and South Africa. Now, those nations I just mentioned, sure, they have their problems, but those countries' future should be decided by its own people, or if the people from that country request help from another government. What they don't need is the United States imposing itself onto them. And what we definitely don't need is someone like Nicki Minaj selling those lies to her millions of fans. Like, we have already seen people who say they are not political easily fall into right-wing pipelines through things like fitness, lifestyle, or music. Nicki repeating Trump's lies helps normalize him to her audience. And that puts everyone, especially people of color, in danger. And keep a lookout for this possible invasion of Nigeria because Trump tweeted this past Saturday that they might go in there guns a-blazing. He is not leading a movement. He is trying to start another holy war. You heard that, Nicki?
Much. Y'all play way too damn much. Nicki Minaj becomes the first female rapper to be invited to United Nations after speaking on the ongoing situation in Nigeria. Let's see what she actually said. She said no group should ever be persecuted for practicing their religion. We don't have to share the same beliefs in order for us to respect each other. You can't even respect children in a fight. If you want to start respecting people's religions, why don't you start here in America? Christianity is pushing every religion out of the way. Where Muslims are being persecuted. Synagogues are being attacked. I know you're looking for something to cling on, but baby, this is not it, especially not for you. You know that man says he loves the poorly and the uneducated, and stepping into Nigeria when Nigeria didn't send for anybody. There are people in Nigeria right now saying, leave us the fuck alone.
The audacity of a country that its government is shut down, is lecturing another country. Diabolical. I am disappointed with the response from the Nigerian government over Trump's comments. I recognize, truly recognize, that there are Christians, but not only Christians, Muslims, also dying in Nigeria. But America is in no position to lecture us.
And here come your non-Nigerian ass stepping into their business by the invitation of a white man. We know you love him, that man with the fucked up tan. Yes, you've been catching heat for the past couple of weeks, but this ain't the way to fix it. You don't know shit about what's going on in Nigeria. And they've made it very clear that there are attacks on both sides. Not just Christians are being attacked. And here come your uneducated ass trying to step in their business. Girl, go finish your damn album or something.
Alright, Nicki Minaj is trending again. Not for music, not for drama, but for politics. And this time the topic isn't light-hearted at all. She's making headlines for her comment about Nigeria and Christianity and President Donald Trump. And what is crazy is that this story has become a perfect example of how religion, politics, and global economies collide in the most hypocritical ways possible. So let's talk about what is really happening here, because what is being presented to the public as a humanitarian concern, the persecution of Christians in Nigeria, is in reality a geopolitical chess move involving natural resources, global energy transition, and power realignment between the United States, China, and Africa. Nicki Minaj reportedly became the first female rapper to be invited to the United Nations after speaking out about the situation in Nigeria. In her own words, she said, "No group should ever be persecuted for practicing their religion. We don't have to share the same beliefs in order for us to respect each other. You can't even respect children in a fight. If you want to start respecting people's religion, why don't you start here in America?" That line hits because She wasn't just talking about Nigeria, she was calling out hypocrisy. She pointed out that in America itself, Christians dominate every space, while Muslims, Jews, and others still face discrimination and hate attacks. But where things took a sharp turn is when she mentioned Trump, seemingly citing him as someone standing up for Christians in Nigeria. That is where the internet exploded, because what looks like a simple statement of support hides a much bigger and darker narratives. Trump's historic about protecting Christians around the world has always been political branding. It's about optics, not empathy. When he threatens to step in, gun ablazing, into another sovereign nation, that is not religious compassion, that is imperial ambition dressed in a white robe. Remember, this isn't the same man who banned travelers from Muslim majority nations, built an empire campaign around Christian nationalism, and constantly used religion as a weapon to divide rather than unite. So when Trump says he wants to save Nigerian Christians, what he's really doing is using religion as a moral pretext to justify potential US intervention in Africa, a continent that is quickly becoming the next frontier for global energy competition. Now let's zoom out. Nigeria isn't just a religious battleground, it's an economic gold mine. This country is sitting on vast deposit of rare earth minerals, natural gas, iron, columbite, graphite, lead, tungsten, gemstones, and gold. These materials are the backbone of the global energy transition. The move toward clean energy, electric vehicles, and advanced tech manufacturing. For decades, the US relied on China for these resources. China dominated the rare earth market, controlling over 60% of global production. After trade wars, tariffs, and political tension, that relationship soared. So now, the US is desperately looking for a new supply chains, alternative source of these minerals, and where do they look next? Africa. Nigeria, Congo, and Tanzania are suddenly being courted like never before because they have what the West needs to sustain its tech and energy industries. So when Trump or anyone in the US government suddenly starts talking about religious freedom in Nigeria, you have to ask, what are they really protecting? Because historically, humanitarian history has been the perfect cover for resources extraction. Let's be clear, yes, there is real violence in Nigeria. There have been clashes between herders and farmers, between extremist groups like Boko Haram and local communities. Christians have been targeted, so have Muslims. Thousands have died on both sides, but these conflicts are layered. They are not purely religious, they are tied to land use, poverty, climate change, and local governance. When Trump reduces this complex issue to a Christian persecution narrative, he's simplifying reality to justify intervention. And when Western media echoes that same line that Christians are being slaughtered by Islamic extremists, they shape a one-sided story that ignores the suffering of Muslims too. Nicki Minaj may be, without realizing it, stepped into a decades-old propaganda pipeline, a narrative that is being used to justify wars and sanctions in countries with valuable resources. Here's the real fear driving all of this: the energy transition panic. The US is trying to pivot from fossil fuels to renewable energy, wind, solar, EV batteries, and digital tech. All of these depend on rare earth elements like neodymium, cobalt, lithium, and tungsten. China controls much of that market, and because of rising tension, America is scrambling to diversify supply. That is why you see sudden interest in Africa, whether it's military presence in Sahel, investment promises, or sudden humanitarian missions. The West doesn't want to depend on Benji for the materials they power their future economy. So Trump's historic about protecting Nigerian Christians isn't about faith, it's about strategic control, softening the public narrative so military or economic moves can look moral. Now let's talk about Nicki herself. Nicki Minaj isn't a politician, she's an artist, but she's also one of the most influential voices in pop culture. When someone with over 200 million followers speaks about politics, that message travels fast and deep. That is why her comments created shockwaves. Her message began as compassion, calling for respect and tolerance, but her alignment, even indirectly, with Trump's narrative gave that same propaganda new oxygen. You can't blame her entirely though. The West media machine intentionally oversimplifies global conflict, especially in Africa. They make it sound like a superhero story. Good Christians versus bad Muslims, so that when intervention comes, it looks noble. Nikki might have thought she was standing for peace, but her statement played right into a power game much bigger than her. Meanwhile, many Nigerians are saying leave us alone. They see what is happening. They see that every time the West intervenes, whether in Iraq, Libya, or Afghanistan, those countries end up worse off. Nigeria has its own internal problems, yes, but it doesn't need American militarization, political meddling disguised as protection. And that is what Nikki mixed, because while she was busy calling for awareness, what Nigerians heard was another American celebrity speaking for them instead of with them. This whole controversy is a masterclass in how modern propaganda works. It's not always lies, it's selective truth. You take one real issue, says Christian persecution, and you amplify it, frame it emotionally, and use it to mask economy or military motives. That is how war starts. That is how public opinion is shaped. Religion has always been one of the most powerful emotional triggers in human history. It unites, it divides, and it justifies. Empire have been built on it, and in the digital age, social media makes those emotional narratives go viral faster than ever. At the core of all this is about control over Africans' resources and control over narratives. Nigeria isn't just another African country, it's the economic heart of West Africa. Its population, its oil, its minerals, and its strategic location make it one of the most valuable partners or targets, depending on who is playing the game. So whether it's Trump pretending to protect Christians, or the UN staging humanitarian optics, or celebrities getting pulled into the conversation, it all circles back to power. And while the West argues about religion, China and Russia are quietly building partnership across Africa through infrastructures, loans, and tech. That is what is really making Washington nervous. So let's wrap this in one sentence. When Trump talks about faith, think about oil, gas, and minerals. When America talks about human rights in Africa, think about markets and resources. And when celebrities like Nicki Minaj speak up, intentionally or not, they become part of a global script much older than they realize. Nigerian deserves peace, Christians, Muslims, and everyone else safety. But that peace won't come from foreign intervention. It will come from sovereignty, equality, and understanding the complexity of the conflict on the ground. So before the world jumps on another bandwagon of saving Africa, maybe it's time to ask who really benefits from that salvation. That is the truth behind this trending topic. Raw, uncomfortable, and very real. Because beneath the noise about religion, politics, and celebrity drama, this is about one thing: power, and who gets to control the world's next generation of energy, wealth, and influence.
And if you have watched up to this extent, thank you so much for all the love and support. Don't forget to please leave me your own thought in the comment section of what you think of this video. And please do not forget that we do not support any form of bullying and harassment. Alright, lovely. See you when I upload the next video.